I'm just watching YouTube. I'm going to watch and see if it comes on. Hang in there. And we are live. So there's no intro there, Jimmy. How are you? Good to see you again.
And we will be riding high. Yeah. What's up, guys?
It's old school, man. It's old school from the houses.
There we go.
Good news, everybody. Studios will be up and running within the next couple of weeks. So we'll be back in the house. Little shout out before we get going, Jimmy. Jason Morning in the house. Jason, how are you, my friend? Benny Scala.
Benny.
A little pop, Benny. I put it on the page. I like when you do that. What is that? Is that the Benny Scala you just did there, Jimmy?
That's what I just did, the player. Although he does this.
Let me see. Is that what you did? Hold on. Let me try.
There you go. There you go.
Maybe Scala should try to achieve this before he does this.
Maybe I should try to achieve that. Nah, I look good anyway. Unbelievable.
Oh, you look good, but I'm saying Scala should just cut it out, right? That's all I'm
saying. Should
he? All right, anyway.
I never see the guns with the shirt.
I'm just kidding.
I can't tell.
Little pop for Benny, Dan, and Benny. Their interview with Bobby Heenan's daughter doing very well now. We cut a couple of shorts, getting a little bit of a pop. What'd you think of that interview, Jimmy?
Great. From what I could see of it, you know how much I've been working lately, but I did catch the bullet points, the finer points of it, and I thought they did a great job. And, man, does she look like her dad, or is it just me?
Oh, no, it's not just you. She was the spitting image of the Bobby the Brain Heenan, for sure.
Yep. But you know what? As usual, you know what I took out of it? That he pooped in Harley Race's crown. That was my favorite part.
That's what you got out of it?
What's wrong with me? Seriously, I like laughed my ass off about that for ever since I heard it. I've been laughing about that. I don't know. I need help.
Well, Kevin Castle, he's a podcaster too. He's a big fan of Monte The Pharaoh, big fan of yours. But anyway, he popped on X about that interview. I think he made a statement like he loves watching people that aren't in the industry, or you don't hear much from them, and then you hear these stories. I mean, the Schiavone, her hatred for Tony Schiavone, was pretty hot. I think, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what I mean, and Bobby too.
How you feeling, Jimmy?
Huh?
Keep going. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. You said how you feeling. I'm like, what do you mean? How? Oh, I'm doing better. If anybody's concerned, I've been having terrible colds and stuff, but I'm doing a lot better. Bobby, to his professional credit, it was just like what you like to call a little microcosm. But when Monsoon had passed away, and it wouldn't even give Bobby ample time to say what he really wanted to say. You could see the grief on his face. It's just like how could he like Tony Schiavone? Unless was Schiavone following orders that night? I don't know, but I don't know. There's two sides to every story. Let's get Tony Schiavone on. Hey, Tony, what do you think about this?
It's weird, man. Maybe it's because it's wrestling.
Yeah.
And we'll get into it a little bit more, but it always seems like it just seems very. The dark side of the ring is, shockingly enough, has come back very strong, Jimmy. I figured they were out of stories. We've discussed that a million times. Mm-hmm. They've recently come back with some stuff, and you're watching this, and you're like, what the fuck is wrong with these guys? Like, they're just not even human. I mean, we'll talk about it, but just like you said, the simple thing, this legend, Gorilla Monsoon, passes away, obviously very close friend of the great Bobby the Brain Heenan, and that's what they do to him? I mean, come on, man.
Right. I know Schiavone takes the heat for that, but I mean, was Bischoff doing the thing back then? Bischoff could very well have also squashed it. You know what I mean? It could be deeper than we think. I really, neither one of us know. We weren't there, but I do wonder about that.
But
And it's funny. You said earlier, these guys. What's wrong with these effing guys? They're monsters. Blah blah blah. Look, I don't know if I can get this out the right way. People are fucked up. Okay, they're fucked up. All right, people when it's easy to, if I had that, I would do this, 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 and this, and that may be true for some people. But you know what? You until you have whatever it is they had, whether it's excessive money or ring rats or nice cars, and after all, it's professional wrestling. They're doing a scripted thing, so it's like Hollywood with pain. I mean, egos get swelled. I mean, Ric Flair could be considered a monster. I've heard enough. I know enough, but I don't consider him a monster. I consider him an extremely flawed human being. I consider Chris Benoit a monster, if you understand where I'm going with all of this. And I agree with you. These people are fucked up. I mean, I love Motley Crue. Did you see the dirt? I mean, what? These people are fucked up. They're all fucked up. I don't know if it's just that line of business. I mean, could you imagine if you went to work and everybody had a backstory like the wrestlers do in general, or the rock bands that we've grew up with in general? No, it's a whole different
but but but
universe.
but,
So I
but Jimmy,
go ahead.
I can
Yeah.
imagine it, right? So when I was in the army, I saw some crazy shit go on, and I saw how
Okay.
certain men treated women.
Right. Okay.
And not to get too deep into it, because God knows what YouTube, and again, I am pro
Yeah.
military, but
Right.
unfortunately, the things I saw going on
Mm.
to women recruits from the rank and file and from the leadership. But you know what? Here's the thing, Jimmy.
Yeah.
I I didn't do anything about it either,
Right.
right? I didn't
Right.
do anything about it until the end.
Right.
So, again, I talk with forked tongue when I pick on these wrestlers who don't stand up for what's right
Fair enough.
because you just don't want to lose your job or you don't want to get in trouble or
Right.
whatever the
Right.
situation
Right.
is. But I was also, to be fair, Jimmy, I was also a 19-year-old, 20-year-old
Yeah.
kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't a 24-year-old
Mm-hmm.
man or a
Mm-hmm.
30-year-old man. At some point, your moral compass you should stand up for something. And
Mm-hmm.
and Tony Schiavone clearly could have stood up. They were going to fire Tony Schiavone for standing up for something. It just proves what a selfish human being the guy was, right?
You could say that. I mean, you could say that. And what's weird? I guess, Mike, we've gotten to the point where we're so in tune with a lot of surface stuff. My first thought is I don't know what Tony Schiavone's personal finances were during those days. I don't know if he had. I don't know. I don't know. Look, I am not Supermark. I don't know everything about every wrestling figure ever. I don't know if Tony Schiavone had alimony payments or he was in debt. He needs to keep the job, like you said. People sometimes look the other way because they kind of have to. Is it morally wrong to do that? Oh yeah, of course it is. I don't know what to tell you, bro. Forked tongue. I think you know what? I think everybody's got a forked tongue. To a
But but
Karen.
but bro, you
hold on. Karen just texted me from inside that Tony Schiavone has 5 kids. I don't know. Maybe he had to feed number 4 and 5. I don't know. Maybe 1 through 3 were covered. I have no idea.
but
Oy.
but you talked about the Dirt Motley Crue, right?
Yeah,
Dirt.
yeah.
Look, I saw it 4 times. Okay, I'm a
Right.
huge Motley Crue guy.
Oh yeah.
But
We
the
both are.
reality is that these 4 gentlemen
Right.
spent their lives humiliating people. That was their fun, humiliating and destroying. And there's
Right.
something wrong with that.
There
You're
is.
humiliating people. And humiliating women. It's disgusting,
Yeah.
right?
No, look, it is. I'm not going to say it's not. Of course it is. So why do you think I respect Bruce Dickinson so much in Iron Maiden? Those guys don't play that game. Bruce is a licensed pilot that flies the band from continent to continent, doesn't do drugs. Steve Harris still plays soccer, and the guy's getting towards 70. They like to drink their occasional beer, but as they've gotten older, they drink a lot less occasionally. Those are the guys I look up to. Look, you find your role models, right, bro? at the end of the day. You know, if you live long enough, some of the people you thought was super cool when you were younger, like Motley Crue, bro. I mean, why am I saying bro? Stop me from saying bro. You know, like Motley Crue, I totally looked up to those guys when I was a teenager. I mean, would I do that now? Are you kidding me? Never. Never. Live and learn. As you get older, hopefully you get smarter, you know?
Well, it's fun. It's funny, and it's really not funny. We sit here and we grew up. It is funny. You said you grew up loving Motley Crue and you idolized them. Me too, right? Vince Neil with the
Right.
blonde hair and the women scratching at him. And on the other hand,
Tommy
on the
Lee.
wrestling side, is we hated Bob Backlund because he was just too
Right.
nice. But the
Right.
reality of it, when you meet Bob Backlund in person at 50 years
Yep.
old, you go, "Oh my God,
Yep.
this is a
Yep.
man. This is
Right.
a man." Right?
Agreed. Absolutely. I could not agree more. I love Bob Backlund now. Mike, did we ever think that we would be saying that? We love Bob Backlund. I love him as a person. He's a great person. I mean, okay, true. We only met him the one time and stuff, but you can tell, you know? At least I would like to think you can tell usually if somebody's like a good soul or not. I've been pretty good at that over my life. I can usually pinpoint the bad ones right
But
away,
you- but
you
but
know?
but Jimmy, it takes a lot for you and I to get shooken up a little bit, right?
Right?
I could clearly say both you and I, before that interview, had butterflies out of control, right? We
Right.
were going to sit in with the
Agreed.
great Bob Backlund. So,
Right.
regardless how we felt of him as a kid or whatever else,
Yep.
we knew what this man was really about, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know, and by the way, on the subject of butterflies, real fast, if I can throw this in, how many of our interviews gave you true butterflies? I can name a couple off the top of my head, and we'll see if we can get any more. Bob Backlund coming in gave me true butterflies. Scott Hall coming in gave me true butterflies. Greg Valentine, the very first time we got to speak to the Hammer, gave me true butterflies. I know this may not ring for you, but it rang for me both times. I know they're not on the same level and all this other stuff, you know, but maybe to some they are. Whatever. But when New Jack came in, I was absolutely swirling with butterflies and not knowing who we were getting. And also Sabu. I was going nuts on the inside, like with excitement and anticipation. You know, look, we are fans at the end of the day. It's a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. And you know what? Like I said, both you and me have been honored and privileged to be able to speak to so many of these wonderful people.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
A butterflies for me, Backlund. Hmm, good ones. Um,
Barry Windham.
Barry Windham,
Okay.
first time. Second time, yeah, not butterflies, but respect.
Oh yeah.
Maybe Million Dollar Man and Mike Rotunda.
Yeah, you were amped. You were amped for that one for sure.
But you know what? I want to get to something too. I think it's pretty important because
Yeah.
you right now are shooting out of what we're going to call moving forward, right? Wahoo Saloon, the iconic
Yeah.
Wahoo McDaniel. And
Yeah.
again, you know, clearly I know how you feel about Karen McDaniel, but on me on a personal basis, Karen is a wonderful human being, and um, you shared with me. I didn't know, but you shared with me today was the anniversary of Wahoo McDaniel's passing. So, Jimmy, I'll ask you one. Um, what did Wahoo McDaniel mean to pro wrestling? And two, if we could get a little personal, and by all means you can say no, but how do you handle, because I've never been in this situation where you're with another human being who had a great relationship with their other half, and that half has passed away. How do you keep that balance, Jimmy, to be able to be supportive but not jealous? Is that a good
Ooh, look at
question?
you. Look at you. Okay. Well, let me put it this way. I think life is amazing because if Wahoo McDaniel did not meet Karen McDaniel in 1981, the future Karen McDaniel, there would have been no awesome, I think it was, let me get the math right, 21 years of them being together and caring for each other. There would have been none of that. There would have been no Zach. which is, of course, one of Wahoo's sons. There would have been no, Nolan and Storm in that particular order afterwards. All great souls, even though I unfortunately have not and will not get the chance to spend any time with Nolan and Storm because they've passed away. I can feel them every day just being here, and I'm a sensitive guy that way, Mike. So basically,
Yeah.
this house is filled with memories of Wahoo, as it should be. Jealousy is not something that allows love to grow, so that's not something that plays into any of this, and it never should. I'm very grateful for Karen McDaniel in my life, and I'm very grateful that Wahoo came into hers, because otherwise, you and I are not interviewing Karen McDaniel, because there was no Karen McDaniel and Wahoo McDaniel. I don't get to meet Karen. I don't get to live with Karen, and I don't get to hopefully spend the rest of my life with Karen. So, this is all, it's great. And it's funny too, because this morning I didn't even realize myself, because again, I don't keep track of things, like maybe the way I should, but I didn't even realize myself until Karen's Facebook post came up, commemorating the day for Wahoo. And this flood. See, this is why jealousy cannot come into this. Mike, okay, we're not in the business, but we've been around the business to understand the business. You know what I'm saying, bro? So to me, it's like all this love and adulation sending to Karen is perfectly normal. Wahoo was not a fly-by-night. Wahoo was a legend. Wahoo was the most important Native American Indian wrestler in the history of this country and of this business. So it's perfectly normal and it's perfectly natural, and I'm thrilled. You want to pinch me? Pinch me. Is this happening? I'll pinch myself. Ow! But that's pretty much the bottom line. I'm just very grateful that circumstances led me to this. You know. And a big shout out
Well,
to you, and a big shout out to you for instigating it. If I don't talk to you at that bus stop in 1981, by the way, it's the same year that Wahoo and Karen met. I'm not saying that numbers mean anything. You know what I mean? In this weird world that I look at from my glasses. But does any of this happen either? So it's pretty cool.
well,
Pretty amazing.
I think it's pretty cool too. And Jimmy, no one could have answered that question better than you. So,
Well, thank you. Thank you.
okay, can I go before we go on with the show? Can we just go a little deeper? Is there anything you might want to share with the family that's watching tonight, that has been around Jimmy Farrell for the last 5+ years and watched our ups and downs, from my heart surgeries to you and things that have happened to you, and you know anything you want to share with the family, or am I going too deep?
I tell you what, I don't think that you're going too deep, but I think we're going to wait for the proper timing to go a little bit deeper, if you're following me. Do you know what I'm
Uh-huh.
saying? If you know what I'm saying?
So everybody, stay tuned. Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
Stay tuned. Um, me and Jimmy, since we've been graced and had this availability to be able to have this show for each and every one of you, it's really has been our honor, and you have been part of our journey week after week through the fights and the interviews and the comedy. The story just keeps growing. And the good news about the channel is we've brought on some other family members who are trying to give us some more high level programming. And again, we just keep pushing and striving towards the future. Anyway, Jimmy, to stay tuned for that. So, Jimmy, I wanted to go off a little off script here because I was sitting working and I fell asleep, which I normally do during late night television. And when I mean late night, anything past 9 o'clock is late night to me. So
It's when I start waking up.
I watched the rerun of Dark Side of the Ring with Chris Adams.
Okay.
So before we get into Chris Adams, I just want to name a few things that this man, right? So this is Gentleman Chris Adams, right? Icon. especially for a WCCW guy, icon, right?
Yeah.
Dude killed his girlfriend with drugs. He beat up a pilot, went to jail for 3 months. He had a wife who passed away in 2010, beat the shit out of her, and ended up eventually being killed by a friend, a fan. Chris Adams had no money, broke. It was over. Guy let him live in the house. Guy didn't have, Chris Adams have to spend a dime. And in the end, Chris Adams gives drug overdoses. The girlfriend, she dies. He's held responsible. He only gets 3 months in this guy's mother's house, or in this guy's house. And then in the end, he comes over and he attacks this guy and tries to kill him, and the guy shoots him and kills him. Going back to the original part of the conversation, what the fuck is wrong with these guys, man?
Yep.
And, you know, I feel bad when I hear their kids talk about like they miss their father and everything else. At some point, your father's just a bad guy, just not a good guy. And you can blame the drugs and alcohol all you want.
Right.
You know, I'll say it, and if if we have the opportunity to interview him, I would say it, and you know I would, and you know you would. If we interviewed Chris Benoit's son, I would say, how do you respect your father? How could you even talk well about your father considering what he has done? Sometimes there's no turning back, Jimmy.
Right. Well, you know what? If you asked him it would be the $1,000,000 question, but I already know the answer, kind of, because I guess I just understand human condition somewhat. He would probably, he would never say it, but the bottom line is that when you have to live with something that horrible, you better start telling yourself some lies. You better. I mean, soft little lies that'll cover up all the shock and anger and disappointment and grief and all that other stuff. And maybe that's what he's doing. I mean, that's as far as I'll go on analyzing, but I think I just analyzed pretty deep. I think that's what people like that will do because they're in that kind of horrendous situation. I mean, do you think he feels guilty? He wasn't there that night. He could have been. If he was, he'd be gone. You know, there's a whole bunch of things he probably feels. You know, and I would love to have to ask him that question. I could see either one of us asking him that question, and hopefully he would give us an honest response like the one I basically just gave. Because, you know, I mean, what do you want him to say? I mean, if you ask him at the beginning of an interview, your father was a monster. What do you think about that? And he goes, yeah, you're right. He effing was. Then what happens? You know, I mean, if he goes, I don't know. It's hard to say. Thankfully, neither one of us have been put in that sort of position. My father was a gentle accountant, and your pop never did nothing like that. So, I mean, good Lord, you
But the
know,
question is, Jimmy, like, who does this stuff? That's what I mean.
monsters,
You're watching these
monsters.
wrestlers dark side of the ring, and I'm thinking to myself, like,
Yeah.
my God, how much can you use people? How much can you take it? Going back to the dirt again.
Right.
If you look at that movie or whatever the flick, whatever you want to call it, biopic or whatever, when you look at it as a human being, you have to detest what you are watching. You know, it's immoral and gross.
I think that we kind of always have been that way. I mean, you know, I'm a much more cynical, believe it or not, most folks probably don't notice, I'm much more cynical than you. You know, I've been a big buff of history for, you know, my whole life. And look, we've been awful from the first day we could write down our documentation on paper. We do terrible things, and we do them to each other, you know. I think I saw something recently like the difference between animals and humans are animals aren't dumb enough to let the dumbest one lead. I could give you multiple examples where humans have done that. You know, hey, this guy Hitler, he seems all right. I'll vote for him. Durr. You know, I mean, it happens. I think about that. You know, the animal doesn't pick the dumbest one and put him to the front of the pack. No, it's not how it works.
Well,
You
you
know,
weren't here. You weren't here last week, but it's very important. I need you to talk about this too. I mean, we just keep rolling into it.
yeah,
The Juice, O.J. Simpson, died last week at age 76.
Right.
Thoughts on Juice as the football player and the human being, and can you share with the family out there what Jimmy Farrow was doing the night? And I think you were doing what I was doing, but
Right.
the night
Yeah.
that OJ gets in the Bronco.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
let me just start before you make your statement. I just want to say this
Sure.
one thing. I was watching, you know me in documentaries. I
Mm.
decided to watch
Hmm.
this last night. And I got to tell you, I guess I didn't realize it either. While all this craziness back in 1994 was going on, right? There were two people, a son and a mother, who were viciously murdered and they were forgotten. It was all about everything but those two human beings. And again, this is what the society has grown to be, Jimmy.
Hmm. Well, quickly on that note, there's still Ukrainians being completely slaughtered over there. I watch a guy on YouTube, and if I can give him a cheap pop, I hope you don't mind. Metal Pilgrim. He's over in the Ukraine, and Mike, you would love his videos, man. He comes out with a lot of heavy metal reviews and stuff like that. He's over in the Ukraine right now, and he said it on one of his videos the other night that I know we're not in the news anymore, but guess what? It's still going on. So there you have it. We select what tragedies we want to focus
But
on.
but wait a minute, Cody Rhodes won the title, so that it really doesn't matter.
You
Cody
know what's
Rhodes is our champion,
it's
so
really
everything is well in the world.
yeah, what's really weird? There are people who think like that. You're right. That's messed up. It is what it is. But as far as OJ goes, okay, well, you first asked me about OJ the player. OJ Simpson was your first kind of like lightning bolt type of runner. Before that, there was Jim Brown. I'm talking about household name running backs for the most part. And sure, there's probably a few more before Jim Brown, but let's start with Jim Brown. Jim Brown was a power guy. He would run right through you. He was a tough dude. OJ was more like his commercial later on, sprinting through the airport. He was a laser beam. He just could break free and see you later. He was the first running back to run for 2,000 yards, and of course, Mike, as you may know, he accomplished the feat against the Jets at Shea Stadium in the cold, in the very freezing cold. So that's when the first running back at Cleveland. Great, TV guy, was in a bunch of stuff. I bet you he was on the Love Boat, right, Mike? The Love Boat. I bet you he was on the Love Boat. I
Absolutely.
mean, OJ was the man. Was the man. We all loved him. I loved OJ. Did you? I loved OJ. Right? Thought OJ was great. And then trying to watch my poor New York Knicks trying to win a damn championship, and it's a critical game. It's a critical game in the finals, and all of a sudden the game is off the air because there's a Bronco going 2 miles an hour down a highway, followed by 87 cop cars. I'm livid. I'm the only one in the bar screaming, "Put the game back on." Who cares? Nothing's happening here. Come back when there's a shooting or a fire or he goes off a bridge. Give me the basketball game. I lost my mind. In hindsight, it didn't matter because, Starks went 2 for 18 and we're still waiting, right, Mike? But
and
then
we'll
the,
and we'll be waiting.
I
We'll
know.
be
Yeah,
waiting for a
I know.
very long time. And Jimmy, just to share this, I
Yeah.
remember that night too, because
Ugh.
you and me. I was at a bar. I was actually home in my apartment
Yeah.
with a naked woman next to me, who I won't name by name, but you do know her.
Oh, okay.
And I literally had no interest because the Knicks are on. And then after the Bronco deal, I just was livid, right? Because I just wanted to watch the Knicks against the Rockets. And it's like,
Right.
what is OJ doing to our team right now? What
Right.
are you doing?
Right. Inserting some bad juju is what he was doing because we all know the rest of that. But then came the trial and it went on. They called it the trial of the century and it went on and on and on and all anybody. And you know me, Mike, I'm usually completely anti news. I don't want to know. I'm like, who gives a crap? This is not going to consume my life on a 24/7 basis. But that's what this was doing. And everybody's talking and talking and talking. And then, of course, if it don't fit, you must have quit. Then I'm going to spend the rest of my life finding the real killer. Then I'm going to get arrested again and go to jail for 9 years. It's just like, yeah, I know. And by the way, isn't it entirely possible that OJ, not exactly being a rocket scientist, just might have bought the wrong size? Doesn't anybody ever think about that? Because I do. I'm like, he probably I'll just take these gloves. Probably didn't even look at them. Then when it's time, it's like, oh
Or
shit,
or
like,
or
I don't know.
Or better yet, Jimmy. Or better yet, Nicole Brown Simpson and Goldman.
Ronald Goldman. Yeah.
Their blood was all over those gloves. I mean, after they dry for a while, I think there might have been some shrinkage. What do you think? If they were so wet and soaked with blood after they dried up, do you think eventually they just worried?
Yeah.
Going to fit?
I think both things are entirely
and maybe
possible.
OJ put on a couple of pounds too. Who the hell knows?
Right.
So Jimmy, yesterday, Phil, Mr. President, shot an email out. He said, "Hey, Hannibal had the great iconic Brutus Beefcake on last night. I was at the gym, so I said, let me tune in and listen." And Brutus gave the Monte The Pharaoh the shout out. You know as well as I do that Missy Beefcake has been on the show. And Missy's probably going to have her own show called the Last Wives Club coming up.
Right.
But anyway, Brutus gave us a wonderful shout out. Actually, more than Joe Whataday did, right? So, he went out of his way to give us a shout out.
I wasn't ready for that.
Not knocking on Joe.
Oh God, I wasn't ready for that. You're a jerk. I think half my soda just went into my kidneys. Oh my God, unbelievable! What a pain! Ow! Incredible.
So the minute Brutus starts talking about us, Hannibal disconnects. He's done. And I was thinking to myself, man, I gotta write Jimmy, right? Because if anyone doesn't remember, recently we got a strike because I used Hannibal's video when he was on with oh man, help me out. Who's the guy's name that he had the
was that Bill Irwin that we had the meltdown?
Yeah, Bill Irwin. Yeah. So he had to fall out Bill Irwin. I played that video, and of course Hannibal reported it, and he got the channel a strike. So I wrote Hannibal. I'm like, you're a dick, right?
Yeah.
You used our shit, we used yours. Now you're gonna play this game. Fuck you. You know what I mean?
Right. And, he was always cool about it, and then all of a sudden he pulled that. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Like, what do you think of that? What do you think of that? That Hannibal, the minute we're mentioned, decides that he's going to disconnect the video.
Well,
what's the hatred for us, Jimmy? That's probably the real question. What's the problem here?
The hatred for us is that we don't play their game. Okay, we just don't play their game. We just don't take no prisoners. We're clearly the ECW of what we do, and I mean that in the absolute utmost of terms. And what applies for him also applies for our buddies up in New York, people like LaGreca and Bubba Ray, and as well, and I actually the difference is I actually respect Bubba Ray. I don't respect Hannibal, especially after his strike bullshit. And here's the best part: we can sit here now and rip. You want to rip him for the next half hour? He can't do a thing about it. You ready? Let's go.
Well, I also have a problem. I guess he's got another guy on named Jack Kilby.
Okay.
Who is the EVP of the great. So, we've got shows on our channel like What a Day and Dan and Benny and the 30 and the Wrestling Remembered. And so, Missy's coming on, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He's got shows, and he's got Jack Kilby, the EVP of the Great North Wrestling. On top of that, Jimmy, he calls himself a wrestling historian. Now, I've asked you this before, but
another one.
What makes a wrestling historian, number one, and how do you become an EVP of an organization that no one watches or sees? Like, are you the EVP of Monte The Pharaoh? How does this work?
No, I'm the LSD additive to Monte The Pharaoh, first of all. It's called self-appointed worship. That's what that's called. It comes from when they decide that they're a pro wrestling historian, or they decide they're an EVP, or whatever they decide they are. I'm the Pharaoh. I'm a regular guy who does a show with my lifelong buddy every Thursday night, and we talk real, and that's what we are. The end. I don't need a label. You label me, I'll label you. Thank you, James Hetfield. But that's what these people do. I'm a wrestling historian. Okay, congratulations. What college did you go to for that?
Is there any of these YouTube? Is there any YouTubers out there that you like, Jimmy? Like, we don't really talk about this, but is there any in particular? Like, yeah, you know what? I like this dude's show or
I
whatever else.
I love Adam from Simon from What Culture Wrestling, the bald dude who's kind of jacked. I think he's fantastic. I love him. He has a great enthusiasm for wrestling, but he'll also say when something stinks. And I just enjoy listening to him. I used to really enjoy listening to Brian Zane, but he's getting way too. Let's just say my philosophies don't fit his. I will leave it at that. So this way, nobody at YouTube is lurking, going, we got you. But this, who deserves a little bit of, deserves a little bit of a shout out. And I still, I don't have too many regrets, but I'm sorry that I wasn't able to do that interview with you with Stu's podcast from Ireland, because that guy cares, you know.
He's a good guy.
So,
Good
he's
guy.
a good guy, But in general, there's another channel, but they don't do interviews. They show old videos and rip the tar out of them half the time. They're a couple of British guys. They're very funny, but it's escaping me right now, which is bothering me. But in general, I don't come close to watching as many as you do. Hannibal's a snore fest. We're on record for that. I can't watch Hannibal. You know, I mean, I love Sean Oliver, obviously.
Or RJ Hudson says he likes Bischoff and Jarrett.
Cool.
I
That's
like
all right.
Bischoff.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hannibal, I can't
Yeah,
stand.
Hannibal's terrible.
Okay, not only is
He is.
Hannibal boring, the guy doesn't even keep track of
Right.
anything. Like, talk about not doing your homework.
Right.
You know what I mean? And am I
I'll
wrong
tell
for
you. I'll
saying
tell
this,
you.
man?
No,
Honestly,
you're not. And I'll tell you another thing too, Mike.
No, but I want to say something, but you're going to
What?
yell at me before you say it. I'm going to say something, but don't yell.
I'll
at me,
try.
okay?
Hold on.
All right. The guy couldn't even kill himself the right way. Do you follow what I'm saying? The guy goes to kill himself, and he can't even do that. I mean, seriously. Am I wrong for saying that?
Okay, I think I'm okay. You were breaking up. What did you say? I'm kidding. Yeah, are you wrong for saying that? I'll leave that up to you and the big guy upstairs. My gut read is I feel like maybe he deserved it. He can't. How often has he screwed with you? That all depends. I'm not behind the scenes when that guy's probably annoyed the crap out of you on multiple emails in the past. So if your basis is the guy's a prick, he couldn't even do that right. Hey, I'll give you that one. It is what it is. But what was the thing I was going to? Oh, I was going to say, no one's more competitive than you and me, and nobody takes things more personally if somebody tries to infiltrate our show with their pop without asking us first, right? But I'll tell you
Yes.
what the difference between you, me, and Hannibal is that when you have Brutus on and Brutus is talking with you for how long was the interview? Was it an hour? I'm just guessing. I don't know how long the interview was. But at the end, if Brutus is still talking and you just cut the cord like that, I can't see us doing that. I can't see us doing that. I think it was rude to Brutus. What do I know? Never mind the fact that his jealousy or his hatred for us was clearly on display. Yeah, good luck living with that. I give him very little thought. So if we,
Dude, the list is long for people that hate us, man.
I don't care.
Sometimes I don't get it. You know what I mean?
I kind of do.
We're not overly cruel. We just call it like it is. We don't go over the top on things.
Right.
I mean, look, there's a guy named John Paz on his channel, okay? I know some people like the guy. I personally, not as dislike him as a person, but, you're talking about effect.
Right.
And I swear to God, Jimmy, and I'm not trying to be funny here, if you close your eyes and you listen to this guy interviewing, it sounds like Kermit the Frog is interviewing a wrestler. It's like, what is this on purpose? Is this what's going on?
So is it basically sounds something like this? Hi ho! Today we have Bob Backlund. Is it something like that? Hi ho! Yeah. Oh my God! Very funny, Frog. Hi-ya! Unbelievable.
But listen, and as for as many people as we think are terrible out there, there's some people that are very, very good. So, and we have a lot of them on our channel, right? So again, it's to each their own. What you like, what you don't like.
Right.
That's what it is, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
there's some shticks out there that are annoying me, like the kid from England. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't even know Kevin Nash has a podcast. He acts like he doesn't know. He's like, I'll think he has a pod. I can't do the English accent,
Mm-hmm.
so I was doing a Southern accent, but it's like, I think Kevin Nash has a podcast. Shut up, dude. Like, if you're in this game, you know everybody who's doing everything. You're looking at everybody because you're like you said, we're competing, right? So you
Right.
gotta know who's out
Right.
there. So this whole thing
Right.
of like not acting like people are out there, it's so stupid and it's annoying.
I got you. I mean, the kid across the pond lost me a long time ago because look, if there's one thing that will not, I don't care if people tune into him or not. It doesn't. What matters to me is are we interesting? Are we not boring? Oh my God, there's so many channels where it's just question and answer. And look, I mean, I wanted to get out of school because of that approach. I don't want to sit there and feel like I'm sitting in history class. And that was what we decided early on in the early days when we started doing this show. It's like, no, we're not going to be like a math test, for God's sakes. And I give you a lot of credit for that because at first I was like Bill Apter Jr., like, oh, let's ask him about the armbar. What? You know what I mean? It's just sometimes that pays off. Sometimes what you like to do pays off.
Listen,
We do it together and we're
dude,
not boring.
there's nothing wrong with what you just said because some people like that. But at some
Right,
point at our age, we got to do what we enjoy.
right.
Like, you can't sit like I have no enjoyment discussing about certain things. I'm sorry. It's just look. I tell the story all the time. For anyone that doesn't know, Tony Atlas was on the show a million times, and I used
Yeah,
to say to Jimmy, "Bro, Jimmy would be like, when are we asking the Brody question?" I'm like, bro, we can't ask that question. This went on, right, Jimmy, for a very long time.
yeah, it did.
Finally,
Yeah,
Jimmy
sure.
broke me down. I said, fuck it, just ask him the fucking question.
Right.
Let me tell you something. That was the best story he ever
Hmm.
told about
Right.
Brody.
Right.
Period. Doesn't
Right.
matter. It's been
Right.
in the dirt sheets. It's
Right.
whatever. Jimmy, you were
Right.
100% correct. So you're right.
Right.
It does pay off. And you know
Right.
what? I was eventually, I was like, whoops, made a mistake. And I enjoyed it. It was an
You
enjoyable
you didn't
recap of what he
you
said.
didn't make a mistake because ultimately we executed it. First off, second off, what do you remember why I told you why we should ask him? Because it's us asking him. Not not the guy across the pond, not Joe Blow sitting in mama's basement, blah blah blah. You know how we like to treat our guests. We actually have the nerve and the originality to treat them as human beings. So I just knew in my gut, let us ask him and we'll see what happens because Tony trusts us. You know what I mean? Tony is cool with us. He's a good guy. So I was not surprised and it was a fantastic thing. It was, but it was you executed it, we did it together, and Tony gave a killer response. And that was great, you know? That was great. I mean, listen. There's also the other half of this. Like,
Agreed.
sure,
Agreed.
I'll nudge you to like ask a wrestling question, like the Brody example. But who calls me and goes, "Hey, listen, I think Chris Masters should put you in the master lock, Jimmy." That's you. You know what I mean? And I'm going, what do you
That's
mean? I
true.
don't want him
Right.
touching me. Are you crazy? Oh my God. Dude, that turned out because I knew how to work. And Chris, Chris Adonna, he recognized right away, this guy knows how to work. So we did it and it was fantastic. But without your idea there and then me executing it, you see the symmetry here? Isn't it beautiful? But that's
So
that's
let
how
me let me
things,
ask you this, Jimmy. Now that you brought that up, because I'm
yeah.
going to skip over this next news item because
Okay.
we're flowing here. But um, of all the things that you've done with the
Yeah.
wrestlers outside the interviews, what
Yeah.
was your favorite?
Oh, wow. Wow. You know what? I think the one that meant the look. I am somewhat of a sensitive guy. Obviously, the one that meant the most was watching Barry Windham, who I know how much you love him. Okay, and I know how much Karen loves him. Karen loves Barry too. Uh, Watching Barry smile when Bray had just passed away and Barry's had a lot of health problems and stuff like that. And again, it was, rap is crap, playing rap is crap for him and watching him smile and really knowing that we made a difference. And a real difference, not yeah, I loaned him $20. Here you go. We made a difference to him. We made him perk up. He was really, you could see how joyful he was when we were doing Rap is Crap. You know. And thank you to the Bart Man when we got together and rehearsed it. You were like, "Hey, can you guys do this?" And I was like, "Absolutely, let's do it." That was my favorite. Another. I know it's not. It was on the show, but when you razzed Backlund about being too old to stand on his head, and again, you're working with him. Bob knows what's going on here, and he walks over and does that handstand. That was just some of this stuff is just organically precious, and I would like to think that that's what separates us from the regular question and answer session. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I agree with you on the Barry Windham thing because I remember sitting, at the table and I was looking at him, and you hit on the head. You and Bart gave him such joy. But one of my favorite moments is early on. Jimmy sang with Coco Beware Pile Driver twice. Okay, twice.
I know.
But my favorite one is the first time. Because Jimmy is when it comes to music and a lot of other things, he's a perfectionist.
Right.
And Coco Beware is out of tune. And he says to Jimmy, "You're out of tune." Jimmy says to him, this is early on, right? Because, again, we're just learning these wrestlers. We're still super fans. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And
sure.
He turns to him and goes, "You're out of tune."
Oh, yeah.
Attitude.
Actually, it's really funny. If you look at it on replay, I don't say a word. I just turn and look at him and go,
"Oh, that's right. You're right."
And what's even funnier is that if you continue, by the way, that was a good version. It was actually very enjoyable to watch that version of Pile Driver, that first one. But what's really funny is that what I'm saying about it is proven because later in the song, he can't remember the words to his own bridge, and I do it for him, and then he jumps in. "You're in the wrong tune." I'm like, what the? Bro, I'm a musician. Shut the F up and pay attention. I'm like showing him the words to his own song. Do you remember that? It was hilarious. I'm like, bro, this is how it goes.
It was great.
It was hilarious.
So, Jim, I was talking to Jimmy earlier today, and Jimmy was kind enough to send me the new Pearl Jam song, and it was friggin' great. Thank you. Yeah. But I was saying to Jimmy, Jimmy and I, obviously Jimmy's in Florida and stuff like that, but Jimmy and I, when we were younger, we both introduced a lot of different music to each other. Because, again, we loved wrestling, but I'm sorry, we loved sports and music much more than pro wrestling, right? I think that's fair to say, Jimmy. Yeah. And I was thinking to myself at work, I was listening to Sirius XM or whatever, and I was like, I wonder if Jimmy would have liked this music. Like, does he listen to this? And Jimmy, I want to talk about the music you listen to, but I put together a list.
Oh, no.
And I just want you to weigh in and tell me, is this something that you listen to or would listen to?
Here comes the setup. You're going to give me 10 of the most putrid things ever. Go ahead.
Well, I want everybody else to weigh in, too, that's watching, because I'm telling you, no, this I don't think it's usage. But if you're ready?
Go ahead.
RJ says Ozzy Boneyard is with Overkill. Am I missing something? What about the new Creed song? There's a new Creed song? I got to listen.
I have not heard that yet. All right. I would like to.
All right. You ready, Jimmy? Honest opinion, okay?
Oh, boy. Like I know any other. Go ahead.
I want to dance with somebody, Whitney Houston.
No, that's not something I would listen to, but I would like to say that Whitney Houston, as far as vocal capabilities, was one of the greatest singers that ever walked the face of the earth. But that does not mean that I'm a fan of Whitney Houston's stuff. I have ears. I can hear how great she was. But no, I wouldn't listen.
By the way, important news just came up, Jimmy. Luce has donated $2 to the channel because Bruce stayed awake for the whole show.
Wow.
In the 30s, he got $2. Wow, it is amazing. So I heard your Whitney Houston thing. So not a fan of the song, but a fan of the talent.
Absolutely. Legend.
All right.
Yeah.
You know all these songs, because don't tell me you don't.
I may not, but
The Perfect Kiss by New Order.
no. And I probably don't even know it unless you played it for me. So no. I'm going to go with no. That's a blanket no because I'm not even familiar with it probably.
All right. Everywhere by Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah, I like Fleetwood Mac. I mean, I've always liked Stevie Nicks is my favorite
Not the
female rock.
band, the song.
You know.
The song. Forget about
Oh,
the band, the
the
song.
song itself, Everywhere. Yeah, it's a good song.
All
Yeah,
right, good. All right.
yeah, that's fine.
Modern Love, David Bowie.
No, and I think
Wow.
Bowie's no. I want to hear Wiggy played guitar. You know what I'm saying? I want to hear Suffragette City. I want to hear changes, turn and faces strange. I want to hear that. Bowie when Bowie has a drawing line with me. I loved what was the album right before he totally went 80s pop that had Ashes to Ashes on it, and stuff like that. That was great. But
I think it was Ashes to
yeah, it
Ashes,
might
wasn't
have
it?
been. It might very well have been. I'm not the biggest Bowie fan, but Bowie during the '70s and into the very early '80s is pretty good. But that later '80s stuff, I know I'm in the minority. China Girl, no thank you. Let's Dance. I will throw myself off a cliff. No, absolutely not. I don't care if Stevie Ray Vaughan's doing the guitar solo. No, So I would say Modern
By the
Love,
way,
absolutely. Yeah,
Phil says that Modern Love was played during a lot during the WWE back in the day. I think I
it
remember
was.
that.
It was. No, he's right. I do
All right, you
remember that.
ready?
Yeah,
Once in a Lifetime, Talking Heads.
great song. And I'm not even a fan of I'm not even a fan of the Talking Heads in general. Yeah, exactly. This is not my beautiful house. This is not that bass line. You know what's hilarious? Iron Maiden has one of the greatest bass players who ever walked the earth. He's got all this complex stuff, and all they needed on that was a boo doo doot, doo 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 doot, ba doo doo doot, ba doo doo doot. And you may ask yourself, I was like, hey, you could do that for like an hour, and I wouldn't get tired of that bass line. It's almost like
But
Dreams.
what's funny, Jimmy?
Yeah.
When we were younger, I did not respect the Talking Heads. I did not like them. But as I got
Okay.
older, I really loved the Talking Heads.
Really? All right. That hasn't happened
Yeah.
for me. Hasn't happened for me, but I would listen to that song to get to the point.
All right. Express Yourself by Madonna.
No. No. No, I'm not a Madonna person at all. I find her obnoxious. It's funny, and this is props to Lady Gaga. When I hear Lady Gaga, the modern day Madonna, that's an insult to Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga is like truly talented, and
That's a
again,
good
I'm not
point.
a fan of Lady Gaga's music, but Lady Gaga, come on, Madonna, no, Pioneer,
Good
I
stuff.
got all of that,
Purple Rain by Prince.
absolutely,
Purple Rain, Prince.
absolutely. Prince was a genius. I found, Mike, if I can bore you for a second, I found newfound respect for Prince when Bart and I were getting to work with Eddie Kramer. And Eddie Kramer, of course, was Jimi Hendrix's producer. So when he talked about Prince and he offered it up, I couldn't believe the admiration level that he had for Prince as a musician, guitar player especially, and it forced me to go back and reevaluate. And I'll still stand by this: the greatest Super Bowl performance I personally ever felt emotion for was when Prince played and it started raining while he's playing Purple Rain. Oh my God! You know, you can't make that stuff up. So Prince, yeah, I would definitely listen to that, even though I'm not a fan of his overall, body of work. Boy, he hit home runs when he sure hit them. I'll say that.
It's so funny, man, because my wife had just brought this up. A little comment from B40. Lady Gaga ripped off, who's this? Dale Bazio from
Okay,
Missing Persons. Do you
gotcha.
know
I
that?
understand. Yeah, no, I understand that. Look, listen, everything, and Jerry Garcia said it best. It's a hand-me-down. Everything is a hand-me-down. Everyone's influenced by everybody. Jimmy Page, some of his greatest riffs were influenced by the old blues, black black blues players, from like, Robert Johnson or whoever it was, Willie Dixon, whoever it was, it's a hand me down. So you could say that kind of stuff, how much of a degree is always debatable depending on the person's perception.
All right. How about Fight the Power by Public Enemy?
No.
Wow.
No, it doesn't do anything for me.
Surprised.
No, it doesn't do anything for me. Go ahead.
Cloud Busting by Kate Bush.
No. Look, Kate Bush. Well, I remember. I don't. Okay, Mike. Kate Bush is one of those where I just go on a soapbox. So here we go. Kate Bush is in the Hall of Fame, but Foreigner isn't. Foreigner with that voice and those riffs and all that other stuff. Kate Bush was always like, to me, some other kind of New Velvet Underground artsy fartsy. Certain people like them, and those are the people voting, and in she goes. No. Iron Maiden's not in the Hall of Fame. No. Kate Bush with your Wuthering Heights or whatever. Take your art, take your fart, and do it somewhere else. So no, I'm not listening.
RJ Hudson agrees with you. 100%.
RJ, what's up,
Straight
RJ?
Outta Compton by NWA.
You know what? Yeah, why not?
Straight Outta Compton, NWA.
Yeah, why not? I'll throw in a why not for that.
Dancing in the Dark by Bruce Springsteen.
Man, did you have to pick that one? Because I was like, and I'm not a big Bruce Springsteen guy at all, but come on, man. Boop, 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 boop. Hey, baby. Come on. Oh my God. I mean, I was just listening to Born to Run the other day, and the ending is so uplifting with the woes, the whoa. It's so great. And then there's that. I was not a fan really of the Born in the USA stuff.
Dude, Loose Cannon.
Yeah.
Bruce is horrible. He'll say it. Can you believe he thinks Springsteen is horrible? Come on. That's out of control.
No. Hold on. Bruce Springsteen falls into that category of vocalists that like a Bob Dylan does. Well, I'm trying to think of others, like I personally love Bob Dylan's voice. I'm not crazy about Bruce Springsteen's voice. So it's really, beauty is in the ear of the beholder, really, when it comes down to it. I mean, I could see why he couldn't stand Springsteen. It's fair, he's in the minority, but
Nutshell, Alice in Chains.
Yeah, Alice in Chains can do no wrong with me. That was basically the Black Sabbath of the 90s with harmonies, because thanks to Lane and Cantrell together, oh my God, what a unique, great sound and a dark sound they came up with. They were fantastic.
What's Love got to do with it? Tina Turner.
Why do you already know how I feel about this song. I don't know why you do this, and I don't think her legs are that great either, just for the record. I mean, it's just...
now you're out of line.
I know. I agree. I'm completely out of line, and I agree. I'll tell you what, it's visual nightmare flashback recall, because the second I'd see those legs walking on MTV, I knew I was going to have to suffer through waiting for the next video and listen to What's Love Got to Do with It. So basically, I guess it's just all intertwined in my head. It's those legs. It's that song. No. So, no. Not a fan.
How about this one? Come On Eileen, Dexy Midnight Runners. You came on Eileen a few times, right?
You're a jerk. You really are. And by the way, I know you're talking about, and you're wrong, by the way, but that's a whole other story. You troublemaker. You're such a fucking troublemaker. I mean, thanks a lot. What was that, like 40 years ago? You butthole. Anyway, unbelievable. Come on, Eileen, and that's COME, idiot. It's just, do you folks at home believe what I got over here? Do you believe this? This is my partner. This is unbelievable. All right. I will admit that Come On Eileen is a guilty pleasure. It's not bad. It's all right. It's all right.
It is more than a guilty pleasure, dude. When that comes on, you must listen to it. And don't tell me you don't sing along to it.
Hooray. Yeah, of course. We all do.
Oh, my God. All right. let's talk some wrestling talk. All right.
Really?
If anyone doesn't know it, you are watching Long Island's #1 pro wrestler broadcast, Monte The Pharaoh, only seen here out of not an indie music theme. We're going to Tin Mirror. Tin Mirror Studios will be our new studio, but right now we're out of Wahoo Saloon and Mike Monty's man cave. So, quick wrestling talk. We haven't really had a chance to talk about it. Concerns, man. No Roman, no Rhea, no Brock, no Seth. You know, I'm not a Cody fan. I did learn to respect him after that cage match with Seth Rollins with the torn pec.
Yeah.
But is this guy going to be able to carry the World Wrestling Entertainment in probably the biggest time wrestling in the WWE has ever had? And I'm going to say more than the Attitude Era. Is this guy going to destroy what has been built?
No, he's not, because don't forget, no star is bigger than the company. I understand that Vince is not there anymore, but I think that philosophy will carry on. And people better, by the way, people better stop rooting for Triple H to not be around. Okay? That is just asking for trouble. If you really love wrestling, you're not asking for that. Shut up. Okay? I think that Triple H, if he's allowed to continue in his father-in-law's footsteps and apply what works for him, and still have the traits that Vince had that made this company what it is today, which is a machine. Keep the machine rolling. They know how to make great promos. They know how to get the right advertisement. They have the financial revenue and smarts and wherewithal to continue doing what they're doing. Okay, Cody ain't going to kill nothing. All right, so relax. Don't worry about that. What I do think eventually is this. Look, and it's funny, we've talked about Cody and Bob Backlund. I wanted to bring that up. He's not Bob Backlund. It's a different time period. There's no way that he'll ever do what Bob Backlund did. He's not going to be champion for 5.5 years and be the guy who's so tough that if someone tries to shoot on him, he can stop them. He's not going to be that. He's not Bob Backlund. Different era, different level of greatness. It's totally different. You know, what I will say to you, though, and I feel that this will eventually happen, I don't know how long it will take, but if they're smart, Braun Breaker should hook up with Paul Heyman and be that next killer heel to hold the belt for a while until maybe Roman comes back. It's just my idea, and who knows
Jimmy,
when
it
Roman
looks
will
like
come
the
back.
route they're going, though. It
Yeah.
looks like the route they're going is Heyman is being held hostage.
Right.
There's going to be a new head of the table.
Right.
You know, the Usos are now out of the bloodline, so you know they're going to get back together. You know, Roman's going to come back. Here's my concern. You mentioned earlier, no one's bigger than the company.
Right.
And I believe that's what the WWE was trying to do for a very long time, Jimmy.
Yeah.
But fortunately or unfortunately, Roman Reigns did become bigger than the company, whether they had it by design or not. And now I think they've pigeonholed themselves because Roman can only come back as a good guy now. And I think they're hedging their bets. And here's the problem with Cody, Jimmy, and tell me if I'm wrong here. There's not enough bad guys. There's too many good guys. And what bad guy can you have a match that you're going to go, I got to watch this pay-per-view. I think Cody could lose the title.
Right.
At least with Roman, in the limited defenses that he had, he thought he could possibly lose at any moment.
Right.
Who's beating Cody? Who is it?
I don't think anybody for a little while. That's why I said fasten your seatbelts. This is going to take a little while. You know, Cody's going to. There are no dominant bad guys right now. You know, we have lost Roman. You know, and once you lose Roman, everything changes. I think that it will probably work, though, if Roman comes back, you know, with the Usos and their faces. I think it'll work. I think the fans are ready to embrace Roman Reigns as a good guy. It might make you and me sick. You know, we love him as a bad guy. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But, you know, and I'm not sure I fully agree with you that Roman became bigger than the company. I don't believe that. I don't. I think John Cena became bigger than the company, but that's because of what Hollywood did for him. I think The Rock obviously became bigger. Stone Cold became bigger. I don't think Roman Reigns, as great as he is and was during his reign, attained the heights of a John Cena or you know, or a Hulk Hogan, or you know, he's the greatest of his generation. Obviously, he's the greatest bad guy champion in the history of the company. But as far as his crossover appeal, where's that? I don't put him in the same category as the great John Cena. I don't.
By the way, B40 says turn John Cena heel and go against Cody. What do you think of that?
Why not? That'd be great.
By the way, real quick shout out, Jimmy, because she's not on the chat. The First Lady of Wrestling, Maria Davis, she had surgery back on the 9th.
Yes.
She's recovering.
Yes.
She had a couple of roadblocks, to say. I've been in contact with her. She says she loves the family and she can't wait to be back. So just prayers for everybody for Maria Davis. We miss you out there.
Get well, Maria.
A quick note again. Joe's been popping it on the comment. Joe, what a day. Is going to have ring boy Gerard on the show Sunday. Gerard, who was on our show. He'll be with Joe on Sunday. And you know, Jimmy, as a legitimate blessing, I'm kind of glad because Gerard's been blowing up my phone. So by all means, Joe, please.
I'll tell you what.
Take him and have a great show with him.
Joe's going to learn real quick to put his phone on mute if that's the case. Right?
yeah, he will. Well, better him than me. But we always appreciate, please, everybody, Sunday, tune in because, again, everybody has a right to tell their story, right, Jimmy? That's what we always say.
Right.
All right.
Agreed.
Here's the main focus of the show, Jimmy. I put together the Monte list of greatest managers, and I need you to critique it and destroy it if you don't agree with it, as you always do. As you destroyed the 80s and 90s list of songs, except for Come On Eileen, which is a great song.
Yeah, and based on a Mike Monty fantasy. Go ahead. I had to.
Yes.
I had to. It's just
but you're right. You're right.
Unbelievable.
All right.
Yeah.
The 12 greatest pro wrestling managers. Are you ready?
12?
This is purely the Mike Monty list. Jason Morning has Heenan at number 1. Jason, you'll have to wait to find out. Little Patty, good to see you, buddy. Number 12, Gary Hart, WCCW.
Okay. You want
thoughts on Gary Hart?
I was going to ask if you wanted me to comment on Gary Hart. Was great. All right. Gary Hart was actually intimidating. Not many managers were intimidating. Gary Hart was intimidating. He was a big guy, very tall man, always wore a suit, always sharp dressed, and had very soulless eyes. I don't know if he put that on purpose because I've heard he was a great person from what I know of him or I've heard about him. I know nothing about him personally. But, that guy he was a damn good manager, man. He was good. He could talk. He was scary. He was intimidating. And you believed what he said. And that's the job of the manager. So, thumbs up. He was really good.
Always wondered why he never got to WWE. He might have told that story. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Look, we found out it's usually one of two things. It's either logistics, like, he didn't want to travel up there, or he didn't get along and didn't play the game that the Federation rules. Who knows?
Right. All right, I think you might agree with this one. So you agree, Gary Hart, number 12? Should he be lower?
I haven't heard the rest, but I understand why he's on your list for sure.
Arnold Skolin, number 11.
Arnold Skolin deserves to be on anybody's all-time list. Wherever you place him is up to you. But Arnold Skolin is I guess he's basically the original good guy manager. I mean, he's the quintessential good guy manager. Have there even been very many good guy managers as we go back, and we'll continue to go through your list? But Arnold Skolin was great. And he never even had to talk. Isn't that amazing about him? Can we say something about that? In the old days, when Arnold would walk out with Bruno, I'm sure Benny would say it. Hey, you took that seriously. Skolin was right there with him. He didn't have to squawk away on a mic to put Bruno over, and he certainly didn't have to squawk away to put Bob Backlund over. Bob Backlund it was great that's why I was so excited when Arnold Skolin walked out with Quick Draw Rick McGraw, and yes, that happened. I thought to myself, oh my God, he's got Skolin. I figured big things were waiting. Unfortunately, that's not how it played out. But Skolin can be on anybody's list for sure.
Number 10, J.J. Dillon.
J.J. Dillon was, the most sleep-induced interview I think you and I have ever had to go through. Let me get that out of the way. But
That was, you know what, Jimmy? Now that you say that, that was my least favorite interview of
yeah,
all time.
yeah, he was not
That was
sharp.
painful, that interview.
Yeah, he was not sharp that day. He was a pleasant enough man. I'll say that. You know,
Yeah.
he was a very pleasant man. It was nothing like that, but he was just the drizzling snores. I was like, wow, man, where's your pulse? But although it was hilarious when his phone rang and it was his daughter and he picked up live on the air. I looked at you. I'm like, want want. That was
I think we made
hilarious.
that into, I think we made that too short, didn't we?
Oh, well, what else would we do? That was perfect, you know?
I mean, I think you literally asked him about like something with the horsemen, and he went into that. He went and worked in a warehouse in Pennsylvania. It was like, what the fuck are you talking about, bro?
Well, I was born in a small town in buttfuck Iowa. It was like, oh no, we're in trouble. This answer's going to take at least 3 hours. Don't spoof your drink there. Oh, yeah. But Jay, you know what? Okay, this is going to sound kind of rough, I guess, but the four horsemen themselves were the preservative. He felt like the additive. I didn't feel like, he was like, the glue and the straw that stirs and makes the four horsemen believable and all that other stuff. He was he was serviceable. I got to use the word. He was serviceable. He did his job. Do I think he's one of the all-time greats? Yeah, because history says so. So I could see him being on anybody's list. I'm not going to argue with that. He's J.J.
All right.
Dillon.
So far the list is holding water.
Yeah, you're doing
Um,
good.
Number
Yeah.
9, the Grand Wizard.
Wow, I'm surprised he's this low, but I guess we'll get to the rest of the names. The Grand Wizard was a great manager. Great manager. You just wanted to, choke him. It's just it's funny. I'm using the term now, but this little weasel, you know what I'm saying? Like this little SOB with his glasses on. Nothing worse than when you can't see a person's eyes, man. I'm telling you. You know what I'm saying, bro? Like you can't see their eyes. Wait a minute, that's
Yeah.
us. But there's like you just want to just choke the Grand Wizard, and he was very convicted. He was great the way he talked. I finger point too. He was great with the finger pointing and everything. And anyone who stood next to the Grand Wizard was going to most likely be a star. So the Grand Wizard's one of the all-time greats. I think he's part of the unholy trinity, right? Between him and Blassie and Albano, they were the
Yep.
core.
Yep.
They were the
You are, sir.
core.
You're correct.
They were the core of the managers that made the WWF and the WWF so special. So yeah, he's great. Wizard.
Number 8,
Yeah.
classy Freddie Blassie.
You pencil neck geek. McMahon, I ought to throttle you with my
I was
cane.
kind of between the Wiz and Blassie. I couldn't make the decision. I finally said, you know what? In the end, Blassie had more mainstream appeal than the Grand Wizard of Wrestling.
Right. I'll tell you, and most people don't, I'm sure like some of I'm sure Benny knows and Phil knows, but most wrestling fans don't even realize the enormity of Fred Blassie. Fred Blassie was a transcending wrestler way before even our favorite Hulk Hogan. I saw Fred Blassie on the Dick Van Dyke Show, for Christ's sakes. I was watching 60s reruns and boom, there he is. What did Andy
Mm,
Kaufman, I think it was
mm.
Kaufman, what, My Dinner with Blassie? You know what I'm saying?
Love that. I love that. I
Fred,
recommend that for any wrestling fan.
oh,
Love that.
fantastic. Freddie Blassie was a legendary wrestler who became a legendary manager. And you can ask Frank Robinson from the great Baltimore Orioles when he tried to manage the Cleveland Indians. Or you can ask the great Ted Williams, who, after his great playing career, tried to manage the Washington Senators. It's not so easy to be great at both. And I understand this is scripted, but you know what? The execution was there. Fred Blassie was a Hall of Famer at both. Fred Blassie is a legendary manager. I couldn't agree more. I'm surprised he's not higher, but we'll see where we go with this.
And by the way, anyone, you could go to Ken Patera's playlist. He tells some really good Grand Wizard stories. We've got a couple of really good clips there.
Nice.
Number 7, Jim Cornette.
Jim Cornette is fucking great. Okay, he's great. He might be the ultimate, like where the fans who root for the faces want to just run him over with their car in the parking lot. No one could generate more true hatred from fans than Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette, whether you love him or hate him, and there are times in my life where I've loved him, Mike, and there are times in my life where I've hated him. But my God, Jim Cornette is the most polarizing of all the managers, probably just on his intensity alone, plus the fact that he's a really smart person, too. There's a lot going on in that brain up there. So I think Jim Cornette was a tremendous manager, who was willing to take a broken leg, too. So it's not like he didn't give body parts for his business. I have nothing but praise for Jim Cornette, even though he probably wants to choke you and me because we're, New York guys who speak our mind. But I still respect Jim Cornette, immeasurably, one way or the other.
Absolutely. All right, this is where it gets a little dicey. I'm waiting to hear from you on this one. Number 6, Miss Elizabeth.
That's a good one, Mike. That's a good one. And guess what? She deserves it. And it's not obviously for Mike's skills. It's just for presence alone. Miss Elizabeth standing next to the Macho Man, or Miss Elizabeth being with Hogan, or whatever it was when she did it, if she was put in the right circumstances and situations, she could do it. It's a joke what WCW did with her. I'm sure you would agree with that. When you saw Miss Elizabeth in WCW and all the miscasting that they did with Elizabeth and not realizing what works to make Miss Elizabeth work, I don't know if that's really on her. It's a shame that she was so
By the
fragile
way,
as a person.
ESO says Blassie should be higher than Elizabeth. Thoughts on that?
I agree. So should Wizard. So should everybody you've named so far. Pretty much. I will put her. You know what? No, to me, she'd be at the bottom of a personal list, but she still deserves to be on the list. And it's well thought out by you to even bring her up, because I bet you a lot of wrestling historians wouldn't even include her, and that's a real disservice to the history of this business, because Miss Elizabeth was very, very, very over and very, very, very popular. Okay. And she helped Macho Man be Macho Man, who is probably one of the 5 greatest entertaining stars of all time. I mean, you could say what you want. I'm sure everybody's got their own list, but Macho Man with Elizabeth next to him was Macho Man times 10. And Macho Man without Elizabeth was times 8 and 8. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
She just
Agreed.
took him to
Agreed.
a perfection level, and she deserves credit for that. So kudos to you for even putting her on the list.
Well, you might not be happy with this, but I think when you think about it, you're going to agree. And I will argue with anybody in the chat room that thinks that this person should be lower on the list, but she should be on the list.
Go ahead.
Number 5, Sunny.
Sunny, I put behind Elizabeth. I understand. Again, I understand why you put her on a list. I understand that. Sunny was no joke. Sunny was extremely over. We shouldn't rewrite history because of what she's, her personal problems and stuff like that. Although we kind of should a little bit, I mean, honestly, you're talking about she got reckless and someone's gone now. So, I mean, there's always that to factor in. But if we're just sticking to career, Sunny deserves a mention. Again, she's not Elizabeth. I'm not going there, so she'd be at the very bottom of my own personal list.
Number 4, the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart.
Jimmy Hart was an absolute grand slam. Jimmy Hart was great. Another Weasley type figure, obviously. No one could talk like Jimmy. I mean, Jimmy's right there. You don't get called the Mouth of the South by accident. The fans wanted to strangle him. And he's similar to Cornette in some ways, really mouthy, really annoying. He's got the megaphone. Cornette's got the racket. You know what I'm saying? I found them to be similar in a very good way. Let's put it that way. They couldn't have been more different from each other, but yet they had similarities. Jimmy Hart's one of the all-time greats.
By the way, Bain says he thinks Francine should be higher than Sunny. I disagree with that. Francine did not have the influence that Sunny had.
Okay, you know what? You may be right about influence, because Sunny worked on a bigger platform and with bigger names. I've got all of that. I get your point. All right, she's no Francine. Francine was the best. I loved Francine. Francine was badass. Francine was badass. She was great. She looked great, and she sold the pissed off valet fantastic. Francine was great. That's just my opinion. You know, I'm not putting her above Elizabeth, but I would put Francine above Sunny.
By the way, great comment by B40. He said you can make a case for Cyndi Lauper being on the list.
You really could. You actually really could. I mean, after all, it
You
was
could.
Cyndi.
I agree.
You really could. I mean, you know, I know that it was brief and that wrestling is not her business, but her impact in this business. Look, the moment Captain Lou Albano made an appearance in Girls Just Want to Have Fun, we were off to the races. Agreed? Vince knew what he
Agreed.
saw there.
Agreed.
Yeah, Vince knew what he saw there. You know what I'm saying? Lauper had wasn't one of your favorite all-time things ever, the Brawl for It All on MTV, for God's sakes. This is due
Absolutely.
to Cyndi Lauper. WrestleMania 1. How, you know, she had it.
Listen, Jimmy, I think I've made a statement to you a million times. In every instance where wrestling started to become huge again,
Yeah.
it started with women. It started with women. Women have always gotten this sport off to higher levels. Obviously, the men are the main focus,
Right.
but it was the women that brought people to, into this new generation. And you can tell by the signings. When you look at the
Right.
high level signings, Jimmy, the list across the floor, it's the
Right.
women. There's no
Right.
men there. It's all
Right.
women.
Well, look, I keep things in
All right,
perspective.
here's
Society, let me just get this in fast. Society shifts and society changes, but the song remains the same, okay? I was raised in a house where I learned a lot about FDR, and behind FDR there was Eleanor Roosevelt, okay? And the old saying is, I think it rings true. Behind every great man, there's a great woman. And nowadays, sometimes behind every woman, there's a great man. Look, if it's great, I ain't complaining. I'll leave it at that.
Let me see. I just saw a comment about Sherry. Like Sherry should be on the list.
Sherry,
Black, Three Lucky Dogs said Sherry. I was going to
agree.
put Sherry on the list, but I was
agree.
like, you know what? I can't put her over Sunny. I can't
I
put
can.
her over Elizabeth.
I can.
And I listen, I can't, I understand where you're going with that, but I always felt Sherry was more a wrestler than a manager.
Sherry was both.
You know?
Sherry was both. Sherry could talk, baby. She could talk. She could sell. She could put whoever she's representing over. Sherry to me is the greatest. I feel like Sherry is more of a template for today's women wrestling than most of them from the past. I think Sherry Martel was more talented than Wendy Richter. I think Sherry was more talented than all of them. To tell you the truth, if you combine the mic skills and the wrestling skills, even the great Medusa, she's not Sherry Martel, period. You know, Sherry Martel was the whole damn package. She really was. And I love Sherry Martel. She was great. I put her above everyone you've mentioned as far as the ladies. That's me.
All right, number 3, Captain Lou Albano.
Hard to argue. Very hard to argue with that. Captain Lou, like I said, the moment he appeared in Cyndi Lauper's video, and then everything else takes its course, everything is history. Look, he's patterned after Super Mario Brothers. This guy he's the captain. He was the loose cannon, and he lived it. What you saw on the screen apparently was like how he was in real life too. You never knew what was going to happen with him. It's completely nuts, you know. And he was the manager of champions, wasn't he? I mean, how many tag team champions did he have? I mean, we lost track after a while. Every time we saw him walk down with a new tag team, we were like, uh-oh, here we go. Here's the next champions, you know? Yeah, Captain Lou.
It's funny, Jim. I was thinking about that, like back in the day, right? He was the tag team guy. The Wizard was the Intercontinental Head and World Champion guy. And Blassie was the guy that could never get the break. Remember when your favorite? Like I always tell a story when Ventura Adonis finally came to WWE, when they got tagged with Blassie as their manager. I think I said, "Forget it, it's over.
Right.
They're not winning shit," and I was pissed off. But it's funny when the Sheik won the title. It felt real. Like Blassie was beyond himself. He had finally achieved something, right?
Right. Yeah, it almost gets lost in the story that infamous night when the towel was thrown in. That Fred Blassie was a huge part of that story because he had been chasing to have a world champion for over a decade, I believe. You know, he had been looking for that for the longest time. Bro, my shock that night It still resonates with me. I could not believe the towel got thrown in, and this is how. After us suffering through Morocco being pinned and Valentine being pinned, Mass Superstar losing, Ventura losing, Adonis losing, your boy Playboy Buddy Rose losing, I was like, this is how he loses. I mean, I'm still shocked to this day, But
Dude,
Freddie
I
Blassie,
remember you and I used to watch The Garden, right? Because whenever it was sold out, you could catch it on MSG Network.
yeah,
And I remember I decided to go hang out with my girlfriend that night because I'm like, who cares, right?
right,
There's no
right,
way the Iron Sheik is beating Bob Backlund. And I remember that next day going to the Daily News where they had the little snippet of they always had the results in the sports page in the corner. And I
right.
was like, am I reading this right?
Yep, yep.
What just happened here?
State of
I could
state
not
of
believe it.
shock. Yeah, state of shock. And then of course we knew what happened after that. Oh, here comes Hulkamania. Good stuff, man.
Bobby Heenan, number two. That was a tough one for me.
Yeah, this is where I reversed the two. I think I know where you're going with number one, so we'll wait for you to say who's number one. But I feel that Bobby Heenan is, I understand back of the baseball card. Look, if I'm a historian, a wrestling historian, and I have to be responsible, Paul Heyman, the back of the baseball card, is the one that reads the richest. But I still believe that Bobby Heenan was the greatest manager ever. There's so many different things about Bobby Heenan that made him the greatest manager ever. You know, as much as you might want to choke Jim Cornette, as much as you might want to choke Jimmy, Mount to the South, they don't even add up the two of them to how badly people wanted to choke the Weasel. I mean, the Weasel was the greatest talker ever. He was able to. He's also the funniest. I mean, obviously that doesn't get lost here. The guy made you like hate him and laugh your ass off at the same time. I mean, how many people can do that? Listen to his commentary during the Royal Rumble. I don't know what's better, the Royal Rumble that Flair ultimately wins, or the commentary coming from Bobby. So here's another guy who was able to. And by the way, let's not get this lost. When he did get in the ring, he was good. Especially in his early days when he was wrestling at first. Bobby Heenan was a good wrestler. So he went from being a great hand in the ring to drawing incredible heat as a manager. And then he becomes one of the greatest color commentary guys ever. What did this guy not accomplish? It's like, oh my God. I feel he's the greatest manager of all time. But that's a personal favorite.
So, Jimmy, I was thinking about that too because it's weird, right? As time goes on, these great things that you remember, all of a sudden the new shiny coin
Right,
takes over, and
right,
everybody
right,
falls into it. Like
right,
Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Mickey
right,
Mantle, Barry Bonds, right?
right,
It just happens, and I'm sitting there. Obviously, you know who's number one, Paul Heyman, and I'm
right,
thinking to myself, man, I know it's Paul Heyman. The guy just came off probably the greatest Hall of Fame speech
right,
ever.
right.
But I thought to myself, man, how can he be better than Bobby Heenan?
Right. See, that's my conundrum
I
here.
did it,
Yeah.
but I did it unwillingly. I wasn't sold. Let me put it that way.
Right. Right. Well, I could see why Paul Heyman would be number one in anybody's list. Look, it's again to reinforce the Paul Heyman pick as number one. If I'm being historically responsible, Paul Heyman's got the back of the card. I mean, what he has done over the last 20 years or so, managing in the WWE on the biggest stage with the biggest money and the biggest entertainment stars in the business and stuff is ridiculous. It's unmatched because what he did consistently for 20 years in one company. I know times have changed, but these are facts. The back of his card is ridiculous. One of the greatest talkers ever. Everyone knows this. It's not debatable. Paul Heyman is one of the greatest talkers ever. And another guy like Bobby who can get you to laugh. He cracks me up. Paul Heyman's face is at ringside. He's like he cracks me up. He kills me. I think he's a genius. He's hilarious. Never mind the fact that ECW will always be my, guilty pleasure. Everything that the guy ever did. Now, I will say this though, as poorly dangerously, I don't think anybody saw this coming, this career. saw this coming. Paulie Dangerously, when you had guys like Cornette running around, I'm like, who's this guy with the phone? All right, that's just, I'm being honest. You know what I'm saying? But what he turned into over the years is undeniable. You know what I mean?
Well, B40 says that he feels Heenan should be number one. I will say this:
I agree. That's okay.
between the two of them, Heenan, I'm sorry, Heyman has always been successful at winning the title.
Mm-hmm.
Heenan was always chasing the title. I mean, I
Right.
was just telling the story the other day. One of the great moments in wrestling, right? And that's why I was like, I got to tell you, I was a little bit jealous, Jimmy, because I really would have loved to interview Bobby's daughter also. Because I was
Sure.
just like, man, this
Yeah.
this this girl could be gold. But
Yeah.
do you remember
Yeah.
WrestleMania 3 when
Yeah.
Andre finally falls, like he gets knocked down?
Mm-hmm.
Heenan grabs his face and is
Right.
shaking his face.
Yes.
I mean, that was story. That was like
Yeah.
real. Like,
Yeah.
I want this title, Andre. Get up, get up.
Right.
It was
Right.
like telling a story without telling, where Heyman, and a lot of times overacts, I think, where Heenan was natural. He was funny, but he was natural. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, if you're talking on a ham level, I mean, Heenan's conviction, organic ability to translate panic. You're describing panic when he grabs Andre by the head. He's panicking. And he, you know what? It looked 1,000% emotionally accurate. The guy knew how to transfer the script's intention to the screen, to the fans, to everybody at home. He was, look, I think he's the best. Heenan was the best at that, man. He
You
was
know, Fox gives a good statement here. Heyman had Heenan to inspire him. Who did Heenan have?
very interesting. I wonder, did anybody ever stop to ask Heenan who his influences were? I mean, I don't watch every last YouTube interview, but that's a great question. I do wonder who he was influenced by. Uh, Mike, I have to bring it up, and don't forget though, Heenan was not always chasing a championship because he had that long run with Nick Bockwinkel in the AWA, which was a totally different story. I found that Bobby Heenan in WWE way more entertaining, but it wasn't his role in AWA to do what he was doing in WWF, later on. I think that Vince McMahon allowed Bobby the Brain Heenan to show many more sides of what he could present to the folks at home. And that's a kudos to Vince in that
Dude,
particular case.
you know what? That is such a great comment that you brought up Bockwinkel Heenan, because they were one of the great combinations in
They
pro
were.
wrestling. But
Agreed.
I will say this. As I've talked about Harley Race and never getting Harley Race, I never got Nick Bockwinkel.
Okay.
I thought he was awful
I got
all the
you.
way through. And if he had any positives, it was Heenan. Um,
Right.
Heenan was so much better in the WWE than the AWA. It was a
Right.
shame.
Right.
And
Right.
again,
Well, if I can
this is just my opinion. I know there's a lot of
yeah.
purists out
Yeah.
there that love
Yeah.
Bockwinkel. I'm not that
Sure.
guy.
Sure. Well, if I could explain what it was, because I know you didn't get it with Bockwinkel. It's really simple, man. Bockwinkel was debonair, better than you. My shit don't stink, arrogant bad guy, and that's why people hated him. He was good at that. He had a face that said, "Please punch me." At the end of the day, sometimes it's simple stuff that the audience can relate to. And Nick Bockwinkel had that smug thing down to a science. I wouldn't be surprised if Ric Flair took a few notes with that smug stuff. Of course, Flair was way more flamboyant. It's not even, it's an insult to Ric Flair's charisma to compare the two. But the serious, arrogant, I wear suits and I'm a prick thing, oh, he was great at that. He was an absolute prick. And Bockwinkel did tell a good story in the ring. He took a beating like pretty well. I mean, when the good guy was like socking him in the mug, he sold it well. He was good at in ring storytelling. Different time, different time.
Jimmy, not to interrupt you, but the return of Jimmy Fingers. We haven't seen Jimmy in a long time. He had wrote me. He had thought our channel was done, but he now
Oh,
realized we're back. So he just
okay.
gave us a 10 spot, and he says this: no matter how you slice it, top three choices in any order
Uh-huh.
One not wrong. You know what, dude? I'm sorry. With my sunglasses, it's difficult reading on the
Yeah,
screen, so I'm
right.
going out of gimmick for a second. Thank you.
Hey, who is that? I don't
None of
recognize you.
them
Who are
have
you?
ever slipped to number 4 on my list in all of my 54 years on this rock. The captain will always be my number one. I can't, Jimmy, it's a great comment.
Yeah,
Hard to argue
sure.
about the captain. That guy was so
Sure.
effing entertaining, too. It was
Right.
insane.
Right. I mean, you know what? Well, let's just go for broke, and I'll throw it out fast. If I had to choose a Mount Rushmore of managers, it would be Bobby the Brain, it would be Paul Heyman, it would be Jim Cornette, and it would be Lou Albano. Those are my four. And that's how I feel about that. I feel like, you want to flip around the order, you want to do anything you want with it, but that's how I feel about the four greatest managers, in my opinion. You know?
You know what? You know what, dude? Hard for me to argue, but I'm just going to take Cornette out of there,
Okay.
honestly. And I would either put in Blassie or I would put in.
What, Wizard?
The problem is, no, I'd have to put Jimmy Hart in, man. I would have
I
to
could
put
see
Jimmy
that.
Hart in. Longevity,
I could
back of the
see that.
baseball card.
I could see that. I'm still going to go with Cornette over Jimmy Hart, but that's my own personal preference.
That's fine. That's fine.
I could see that, though. Jimmy
3
Hart
lucky
is.
dogs. So real quick, Jimmy, we've got a show next week as we start to head to our new studio. And then, guys, we thank you for staying with us. Our production level will become much better. Again, our old studio had closed, so we had to shoot from here until we got the other studio up to par.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we'll be back in there. Our first shows, depending on what's going on with Jimmy, if he's
Right.
around.
Right.
On May 2nd, Stan Hansen at 9 p.m. will be in studio. The great Stan Hansen, who actually has a picture on my wall against Hulk Hogan. So
There you
he's
go.
made the man cave wall.
There you
And then
go.
this is a big one. On May 3rd, Tony Gurria, the legend,
Oh.
will be in studio.
Tony
Gurria, Jimmy, what did Tony Gurria mean to you back in the day?
Well, let's be honest. We root for bad guys back in the day, but Tony Gurria was a staple of that time period. Those early days when we were watching wrestling in the early 80s. Tony Gurria was one of the great faces of his time. Tony Gurria was the tag team guy that you wanted to team with because whether it was Larry Zbyszko, Dean Ho, Rick Martel, Haystacks Calhoun, I think I've got them all, pretty much. I might be missing somebody. Forgive me. I don't sit up at night and read these things. But anybody who Tony Gurria anybody who Tony Gurria teamed with, it was almost like when Albano would walk out with the next team, you said, there's the next champions. It was the same thing. When Tony Gurria would partner up with somebody, you'd go, oh, well, that's the next tag team champions on the face side of things, And let me get this in real quick. I want to get this in fast. We've been talking about managers and what's the greatest thing about a manager? How he puts somebody over, obviously, and how he, is able to sell the shtick. All right. What do you do with a guy like Mean Gene, who is greater than half that list we just mentioned, and wasn't a manager? Here's a guy who put everybody over. I mean, for God's sakes, he could put anybody and anything over. I just had to throw that out there.
So I'm going to interrupt you on that for two things first.
Yes.
Jimmy Fingers with a 2 spot. Any chance of getting John Cena back on the screen? We had John Cena about a month ago, right? Or about a month and a half ago. But he'll be back.
Of course.
He'll be back.
Of course.
We love John Cena.
He's great.
Can I say this, Jimmy, without insulting you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Samantha Irvin, to me, is the greatest ring announcer the WWE has ever had.
I think she's better than Lillian, if that's what you're getting at. I think she's better than Lillian Garcia.
Come on, no, that's not what I'm getting at. I'm talking better than the Fink. I'm going to say she's better than the Fink. Jimmy Fingers says, "No way, Monty, no way." I'm sorry, Jimmy, I got to go with it.
I'm gonna tell you what. I'm gonna tell you what. She's effing great. Okay, she's great. She's not the voice of Madison Square Garden. She is not Howard Finkel. No way. I'm not doing it. Howard Finkel with that booming voice. I'll take Howard Finkel on my dream card as my ring announcer 10 out of 10 times. But I
All
understand. I mean, she's
right,
great.
Samantha
Irvin's
Irvin
great.
or Gary Michael Capetta? Samantha Irvin or Gary Michael Capetta?
You're a jerk. You're a jerk. What are you doing that for? We love Gary. What are you doing? Are you proud of yourself? Okay,
It has nothing to do with our love for Gary. I'm asking.
Okay, all right. Well, here's the truthful answer. No, you answer first, so this way I can blame you.
I'm putting, first of all, Three Lucky Dogs says that Lillian was better than Samantha Irvin. Guys, Samantha Irvin is
really
the
good.
creme de la creme.
She's really
that
good, man.
Booming voice, her style, she
agree.
has changed ring announcing forever. I understand. I loved Finkel too. I love Gary Michael Capetta.
It's not Finkel. Finkel's the prototype for what she is today. You know? I mean, you know why people are fighting you on this, Mike? It's not just because they're fond of their history and that's how they feel, which is perfectly explainable. It's that she's now. Wait for time to go by. All right. And you will find that what you're saying right now is going to hold true in a lot of ways. She's going to be
Right.
to this generation of fans what Howard was to us. All right. She's excellent at what she does. All right. And quickly, if I can, because it ties into what we're talking about, I'll never forget back in the day, I had a good friend of mine, an older man named Jerry, who I went to the Jet games with for about a decade. He was a sweet man. But I remember one time I said to him in like 1995, now Jerry was older than we were, so he grew up during the days of Mel Allen with the Yankees. And I turned to him and I said, John Sterling is in the midst of becoming this generation and more generations to come, Mel Allen. And he lost it. He was like, oh my God, how could you mention John Sterling and Mel Allen in the same sentence? History has spoken. John Sterling just announced his last game after overdoing 5,000 Yankee games since 1989. It is high, it is far, it is gone. Burn, baby, burn. He was amazing. But because when I made the comment back then, John was in the present, let history take care of things. It'll work itself out. I agree. Samantha's fantastic and will be judged accurately. Give it time.
By the way, it was time for him to retire, dude, because he was calling home runs that were being caught like halfway down the field. That's out of Oh, caught by Johnny in right field. Listen, here's a question for you. Jimmy Fingers coming up with another one, the two spot. Jimmy, thank you so much for being back. We love you.
Jimmy.
And my name is Joe McHugh. Samantha Irvin or Joe McHugh? Oh my God, he's going with Joe McHugh.
I'm going with Joe McHugh. Ladies and gentlemen, this contest is scheduled for one fall with a 20-minute time limit. And my name is Joe McHugh. Are you kidding me? I love Joe. Joe, what a great voice. He had a great voice. Great.
All right, I'm going to trigger you right now. B40's got something for you. Ready for this?
Yeah.
John Sterling was a cheap self-promoter, but himself. Wait, got to go to the glasses, Jimmy. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to read. Going out of gimmick again. John Sterling was a cheap self-promoter, but put himself above the game. Bob Murphy is the GOAT. Bob Murphy getting a call out. What do you think of that?
Hey, you know what? Listen. John Sterling I could see why you think John Sterling's over the top. And if that's the main gist of it all, fine. I get that, okay? But you know who was about themselves was really not a guy like John Sterling. It's a jackass like Joe Buck, okay? Though it was guys like that I found absolutely obnoxious and annoying as shit. But that's, a whole nother story. Bob Murphy was a class act. Bob Murphy was a great announcer. Hell, I remember enjoying Leslie Nielsen and those suits he used to wear. I mean, come on. There were some great announcers in the past, But John Sterling, listen, the Yankee fans have spoken. We loved him. In general, we loved him. You know who was really about himself and who I can't stand is Michael Kay. Now, there's the guy who puts everything after himself, all right? His arrogance reeks, all right? John Sterling never felt arrogant. John Sterling felt playful. Oh, isn't that amazing, Susan? Oh, John, that's Roger Clemens in the booth. That was some great stuff. John Sterling was the E in entertainment, you know? I thought he
I
was
love it.
fantastic, and all those different things he would come up with. The fans wanted that. They wanted "Burn, Baby, Burn." They loved when he would, here comes the judge. Just the little simple Sterlingisms that he would come up with. You know, but I understand why you would like Bob Murphy more. Geez, you could go back to Vince Scully. You want to hear someone announce a game professionally? Listen to Vince Scully. That's the textbook right there. You know.
I love it, Jimmy.
Yeah,
I
I love
friggin'
baseball.
love it.
I miss baseball. It's weird here in Florida as far as baseball goes. This is like culture shock for me.
What about Ralph Kiner, dude? What about Ralph Kiner?
Ralph kind of was fine. I thought he was fine. I enjoyed listening to him. I used to watch Met games too. I mean, if the Yankees weren't on, of course I watched Met games growing up. I used to love
Well,
listening.
forget about like Mets, Yankees, or
Yeah,
anything else, right?
yeah.
I'm just saying overall baseball announcers.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's like chemistry goes a long way too. Like you and I, you have something you can't teach. You know who had great chemistry? And Mike, I don't know how well you remember it, but Phil Rizzuto and Bill White. Oh my God. The chemistry that they had
Oh,
between each other.
fantastic, dude.
The chemistry
Fantastic.
that White you Huckleberry, they would get on each other unbelievably. I thought that those two had tremendous chemistry back in the
Dude,
day. They were a
what
shtick
about
unto
Lindsey
themselves.
Nelson? I remember growing up, my father with Lindsey Nelson. You remember
Yeah,
Lindsey Nelson with the suit?
right, right. Yeah, no, he was awesome. He always had the post show or Kiner's Corner or whatever. Yeah, he always had those. By the way, did he steal his wardrobe from Uncle Floyd? I think that's a possibility.
I think. All right,
Just what?
you got it. Before we go, how about
Yeah.
Tim McCarver?
You know what? I
The
got
greats,
biased
right?
against. He is one of the greats. He is, but I got biased against him the same way I do Joe Buck. I used to you could hear them rooting against Tory's Yankees in those World Series. You could hear it because McCarver, and it's not his fault. I
Yeah, I
mean,
know.
he
You're
was
right.
he was a nemesis. He played for the Cardinals. Him and Gibson beat the Yankees in the World Series in the early '60s. He hated the Yankees. He hated them, and you could hear it coming out in him. And Joe's father was a great National League announcer, Jack Buck. So you could hear the please somehow baseball gods have the Yankees lose. You know what I'm saying? And it was just that would annoy the crap out of me. Were they great at what they did? It doesn't matter if I don't like them. They were both great at what they did. Period.
Well, all right. So again, just remind everybody: May 2nd, Stan Hansen studio. May 3rd, Tony Gria and Scott McGee in studio.
Yeah.
I want to say again, Maria Davis, prayers to you. That hope your recovery is fast. We can't wait to see you back.
Maria.
Jimmy, to your better half, I want to say prayers to you, and we're all thinking about you. And Jimmy, you want to send us out? Another great show. You did great, guys. Thank us for hanging in there. Thank you guys so much joining us every Thursday. We'll see you next Thursday. Jimmy, you want to send us out?
Certainly. You've been watching Monte and the Pharaoh. And until next time, later.
And soon we'll have our out tape. We'll have everything rolling again, so it'll be good. God bless.